So as I mentioned, I'm Jen. I have been at the school now for coming up on 18 years in a variety of capacities. And I am an alum of the MSW program. So we are really excited that you're considering joining our profession. Um, just a little bit about myself. I am from a tiny town in King Cove, Alaska, and a first generation college student who came to the UW after transferring from community college, and really just passionate about higher education and so happy to be here with all of you tonight. I'm going to pass it over to June, my colleague.
Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Jun Para. I am currently the academic advisor for part-time EDP students. So I started at the school last April. And prior to my current role, I was working at UW Tacoma. I was there for 2 years. And then prior to that, I was working at San Francisco State University. I was there for 5 years and a half. I got my undergrad in liberal studies concentrated in math. I did my student teaching and I was like, nope, that's not for me. So I continued my education and got my master's degree in counseling, specifically for college and student affairs. So I grew up in the Philippines and I came back here when I was 14. And when I was studying at Fresno State, I just kind of grew my passion working with college students, especially with first generation and low income students. So that's really like my goal is to help students thrive and reach their goal regardless of their current situation. And what I love about my part-time students right now is that they are amazing. They are juggling being a full-time employee, being a mom, being a dad, being a family member, a friend, and then going to school. So they are amazing, and I can't wait for you all to be part of that community. Welcome again.
Thanks so much, June. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Nyla.
Hello, besties, perspective, future, new, and old. My name is Naila Hernandez, they, she pronouns, and I serve as the Assistant Director for the MSW program here at the University of Washington School of Social Work. My background is in social work and law. I earned both my MSW and JD here at the University of Washington, and I also had a bachelor's in family and human development from Arizona State University. Before stepping into this role, I worked in nonprofit leadership, coaching community-based initiatives that focused on racial equity, housing justice, mental health, and youth development. I also teach here as a part-time lecturer within the School of Social Work, where I teach about program design, critical self-reflection, intergroup dialogue, and my favorite, which is nonviolent communication. In my work, I'm especially passionate about building accessible and supportive pathways for students to thrive in graduate school while staying rooted in their communities. And that is what really makes me love our part-time program options. So part of that is what really makes me excited to be able to talk to you all tonight about what those part-time program options are. With that being said, we can go ahead and continue moving forward. Wonderful. So just for you all to know, it's really important for us at the University of Washington School of Social Work to acknowledge the land and labor of those who have occupied this land before us and whose efforts are what allow us to gather with you all today. So we'd like to take a moment to begin with a brief land and labor acknowledgement. The University of Washington's Seattle campus is situated on the ancestral homeland of the Duwamish people, the first people of Seattle. The University of Washington acknowledges the past, present, and future of the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We remember that our country is built on the labor of enslaved people who were kidnapped and brought to the United States from the African continent and recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We also acknowledge all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples who have contributed to the building of this country and continue to serve within our labor force. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor, and we encourage you all to go beyond acknowledgement uh, into, into nations of learning and advocacy for these people as well. With that said, go ahead and move to the next slide. Thank you. Okay. So some of you may have received this information in either our general info session or our funding options info sessions that we've offered. But with that said, I'll begin tonight with just a brief overview of our program's most notable features and what you can expect from the rest of our time together this evening. So why UW School of Social Work? The UW School of Social Work is based in Seattle, where you'll have opportunities to be a part of one of the nation's most diverse student bodies. You'll have the chance to collaborate with innovative organizations and engage in complex social issues. One thing I'm really proud of is we also offer various funding options, traineeships, fellowships, and access to over 600 practicum sites all throughout Washington State. What we'll focus on this evening includes the structure of our part-time program options, samples of our students' plans of study, and holding space to address any questions that you all might have. And just to reiterate before we start our mini lecture, feel free to use our Q&A feature and or the chat to track your questions as we go, and then we'll make sure to answer all of those as we continue. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Wonderful. So just a little bit about our part-time program options. So our part-time program options are going to be evening or online. And these options are geared towards working professionals who are seeking to serve in community behavioral health settings, any kind of center where you're centering the holistic needs of individuals, families, and communities beyond traditional therapy. Students learn to meet people where they are while transforming systems of care to promote equity and access. So you'll be grounded in a social justice and transformative justice framework throughout your time here. The specialization we offer is a clinical specialization, and that cultivates practitioners who act as healing presences in their work. And that's the integrating of clinical skill with critical analysis of socio-political contexts. So what I really like to name from the beginning is, unlike traditional therapy programs, our approach here at the School of Social Work situates mental health practice within broader struggles for justice, community wellness, and systemic change. So that's a little bit about our programs, and I'll move over to the program structures. Thank you. So beginning in the fall of 2026, our part-time program options will be admitting students for our in-person evening and online program options. All of our part-time program options will offer a curriculum that takes about 11 quarters to complete, with some synchronous or mostly synchronous and some asynchronous components to support your learning. So throughout your time here, students will be expected to complete both what we call a generalist curriculum and a specialist curriculum for your coursework. So students in that generalist year of the clinical MSW program can expect to build a strong foundation in social work values, that's theories and skills, while developing broad systems-based understanding of practice. This includes training in engagement, assessment, intervention, evaluation across different ecological levels, so the micro, the meso, and macro, while all having you focus on working with individuals, families, groups, and communities. The generalist year, or quarters rather, emphasizes applying an equity and justice lens. It has you integrate research-informed practice and gain field experience that will prepare you for advanced clinical training. The class load during your generalist year will look like 2 courses per quarter for your first 3 quarters. So again, two courses at a time for your first 3 quarters. Quarters 4 through 7 for you will shift to about 1 course, and then we'll add a practicum. I'll talk a little bit more in a second about what practicum entails. And after you complete your generalist year, that is where you'll be taking a deeper focus into your specialized curriculum. And in those specialized years of our MSW program, so this is quarters 8 and beyond, students can expect to deepen their own knowledge and skills and advanced clinical practice with, again, individuals, families, and groups. So coursework and field education in this time will focus on evidence-based therapeutic models, differential assessment, diagnosis, and treatment planning across diverse populations. So students will be able to strengthen competencies in critical thinking, cultural humility, ethical decision-making, while refining your professional identity as a clinical social worker. So in short, quarters 8 and beyond, you as students will transition into a specialized practicum placement and will average a class load of 1 to 2 courses per quarter. As I mentioned, student coursework will be supplemented by direct on-site experience, so a field placement at a practicum site within Washington State. So during these generalist years, students are required to complete 360 hours of practicum. That's on average of about 16 hours per week in addition to your course load. Whereas in your specialist years, again, those advanced years of the program, you're expected to complete 680 hours of practicum, which is about 24 hours per week. So if you think about it, you go from 1 to 2 days per week to about 2 to 3 days per week. Your specialized year is designed to give you much more exposure to direct practice experience as possible. So quarters 4 through 7, you're on-site practicum 1 to 2 days per week. Quarters 8 and beyond, 2 to 3 days per week. One more thing about practicum is field placements will typically happen in students' communities in which they're located, so within a Washington service delivery area, so that you can apply your learning directly where you live and work. There will be opportunities for you to explore agencies of employment if you are working for a state agency, etc. So what this means is that although our coursework will be offered um, in a particular setting, your students will still be expected to have practicum placements that may occur in person, both in and around Washington State. So our part-time program options will have an in-person and online option, but your practicum, regardless of what program option you're in, may require you to be in person. But we'll work with you throughout that during your time. Next slide, please. Wonderful. I know I'm throwing a lot of information, so please, again, feel free to use that Q&A feature if you have any questions. So a little bit about the class schedule. So what we aim to have for our clinical classes is to have class sizes of about 25 students. Our part-time program options occur in a real-time classroom environment, whether it's online or in person. And you will be expected to have some kind of asynchronous course content. So whether that's having readings before class and coming to class prepared, which is pretty standard for graduate programs. A benefit, though, of having these smaller class sizes in comparison to other programs is that it tends to lend itself to more individualized support from instructors. And having a cohort style learning model means that you'll get to build meaningful relationships with your same cohort mates throughout your entirety of our program. Students tend to have questions about when classes occur and what they can expect. So classes are held on weekday evenings, both online and in person. So that's both for our evening option and our online option. And each class session runs about 3 hours. They all typically take place from 6 p.m. to 8:50 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The design of our part-time program options is intended to support students who will continue as working professionals by keeping class times outside of standard work hours. So this is why you will tend to have classes in evenings. And with that said, I will go ahead and pass it over to June as she'll give you a curriculum snapshot, but I will be looking at the chat to see if you all have any questions. June, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nyla. So I'm a visual person. So looking at this is kind of like your overview of your program, right? So we have currently 3 years for our EDP students, part-time students. And as you can see here, there's a like a consistent 2 classes per quarter, right? So the reason why we kind of planned it that way is so that students are still able to maintain their full-time job and manage a master's degree classes with their full-time job, right? So year 1, we have 500, which is our foundation of social work practice. 504 is our social work for social justice. 501 is poverty and inequality. 513 is macro practice. 510 micro and meso, and 512 macro practice. So the first 3 quarters is gonna really help you and give you a foundation to start your first generalist practicum, which is your first year of summer. So 524 is your generalist practicum. So you're going to work with your field faculty in terms of getting a site and like discussing how many credits, meaning how many hours you're going to be working in that site, right? So this is just an example. It says 3 credits in the summer, but some of my students might want to do 5. And that's okay if their field faculty is okay with that. So keep in mind that the credits, which is equivalent to hours, so 1 credit is equivalent to 40 hours. That can change depending on the agreement you have with your field faculty. Okay, so that's kind of like your year 1, giving you a foundation, preparing you for the generalist practicum. Year 2, right? So we're continuing the generalist practicum. Generalist practicum is 10 credits total. So you need to complete 10 credits. With that, we have continuing 505, which is your research. In winter, we have 519 or 520. The difference is that 519 focus in the adult population. 520 focuses in the child, youth, and family population, right? 506 is continuing the research, and 574 is more evaluation. So you have a choice between 506 or 574 in your second year in spring. So by the end of either winter or spring, it depends on how many credits you take each quarter, you might complete the 524 at that time, okay? As you can see here, we also have electives. So for our part-time EDP students, we have 9 credits, 3 electives total for the program, right? So those electives are flexible. You can start it in the second year of spring, or if you want to start it in your second year of summer, totally fine. As long as you complete 3 electives, and we have a lot of different type of electives on our list. So keep in mind that you just need to complete 3 of those, okay? And then continuing your second year of summer, we have 514 and 515. Like 519 and 520, 514 focuses on adult population and 515 focuses in child, youth, and family. And then as you can see here, we have 525. That's your specialized practicum, right? You have 17 credits total of your specialist practicum. Like 524, you can take different credits in each quarter. As long as you complete 17 credits by the end of your last quarter, then you should be fine. That's going to be, again, an agreement with your field faculty. And starting year 3, autumn, we have 571, which is your assessment mental disorder. And then we have 598. Now, 598 is your integrated seminar. That is 1 credit per quarter, but 3 quarters in a row, right? So you can see here, it's going to be autumn, winter, spring, and it's just 1 credit for each quarter. If you want to, let's say, finish in winter, you just want to make sure that we start your 598 in the summer, right? So there's a ways to finish early. It's just more of a conversation with me and making sure that you're completing all of these requirements by that graduation deadline, okay? And let's see. I think that's it. Let me know if you have any question, but this is like the overview of all the classes that you'll be taking in the program. Okay. Oh, one more. I just remembered. Go back. Yeah. 598, you cannot start it in winter. So just keep that in mind. You can start it in autumn, you can start it in spring or summer, but we don't offer 598 in winter. So something to keep in mind. Okay. All right. Next slide. And so being a part-time EDP advisor, I'm also the student engagement. So one thing that we've been trying to create in our community is to do something for our students. So since I've been part of the school, we've been creating like open houses, like Waffle Wednesday. So know that regardless of which cohort you choose, whether you're going to be in evening or online program, know that there's going to be student engagement that will be available for you all, right? So and if for some reason you're not feeling that there's a student engagement, then let me know, because then we can create something that everyone like would feel that they are included in our community. Lots of resources in our school. One of the resources that I really, really like to enforce to our students to utilize is the Writing Center. So we have 3 amazing writing tutors, and they help you with your paper. So one of like an example right here is like, so for Social 501, they have like activities and all this amazing like kind of after session that they can help students with their assignments with specific courses, right? So make sure that once you're part of the program, utilize the Writing Center. And I want to also highlight Lev. Lev is our amazing mental health professional that work with School of Social Work. So that's just one of the resources again that we have. And there's many more. Once you're fully on board, I am more than happy to kind of go over all of the resources that we can provide for you, but I just want to highlight those resources. Okay, okay, next. And then next we have Nelslan. Nelslan is an amazing, amazing person that is currently in our part-time EDP program. And Nels is gonna kind of share his wisdom and experience so far in the program. Nels, your floor.
Um, yeah, sorry, we're just like eating dinner right now. So I guess my like I don't know if anybody has any questions, but yeah, like this morning I registered for my last quarter of classes at the University of Washington School of Social Work. You'll also know that like if you want to get the elective classes you want, you have to be up at 6 a.m. to register for them because the good ones will get snatched up, will get taken. Um yeah, I guess my MSW journey, I started off, I was a school teacher. Um, I was a school teacher for 10 years. Before that, I graduated from like a small college in Vermont with a degree in biology and then moved around and farmed for probably 6, 8 years, and then got to a point with that where I was like, yeah, don't know if I can do that anymore. And I found myself educating people every week at farmers market and like helping people in that way. And then I got into a teaching program at the University of Mississippi and did that and started teaching school and taught school for 10 years. And then I really noticed in my last 2 years of teaching school that I taught 7th grade science that a lot of my time was being taken or was being used, in a way in which the school was trying to like really like I don't know, wanted us to really be like mental health professionals in a way, like to provide that service as much as a classroom teacher can do. And so I started looking into different programs and I found the MSW program at the School of Social Work in the University of Washington. And I applied and was accepted. And then I started. And as far as just like, I don't know, teaching, I was like teaching school and like coaching every day. So like it was kind of hard for, I also live in Eastern. I was like also traveling 3 hours to get to the UW on Saturdays and Fridays one way, over mountain passes with like a small group of folks that we would carpool with. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's been great. It's been a great part of my life. Like I'm like almost finished. I didn't teach school this year. I now work at Okanagan Behavioral Healthcare and OMAC, and I do school-based mental health. I pretty much have I'm an intern, but I have like a caseload I counted today of 16, and I have 2 evals later this week. So, I pretty much have like my caseload that I'm doing school-based therapy right now. And then like just kind of a testament to the School of Social Work. You're doing very micro level stuff where you're interacting with kids every day, working with kids every day, utilizing therapeutic modalities. But then also like on Sunday, I was out canvassing with the superintendent of the Lakeshline School District because they're running a bond on Tuesday that they're trying to build new school with. And so, I like that the School of Social Work does a lot to really like educate folks as far as macro level social work as well as micro level social work. Um, so yeah, I don't know. As far as Genevieve, your question, how has it been? Is it doable? Yeah, it's doable. You live in South Bend, which is, I don't know, probably 2 hours from Seattle with no mountain passes, just some pretty heavy duty I-5 traffic. I think, yeah, it's certainly doable if it's a priority. I have a kid, a family, all of that stuff. And there were times that like instead of going up and watching my kid wrestle, I would be here on a Saturday morning working all day to get like all my work done. Um, I did my first practicum at the school I worked at, which was like more work. So I guess, is it doable? It really, I don't know. It depends on like how much work like you're willing to do, how passionate you are, things like that, that if you feel as though you can manage it. But also like that said, everybody in my, like, I'm not like an outlier. Everybody in my cohort, we still keep in touch. A person texted me out of the blue this morning, like, "Hey man, been thinking about you," like blah blah blah. So I went back and forth with them for a while. I feel like I've got a fairly good little like network of people in the state of Washington that I know through the program. There's a woman I work with who's also finishing up her MSW at Eastern, and so we kind of have like some camaraderie. So yeah, I don't know, like I don't know, June, does that answer questions, or do you need any more detail about any given thing, or does anybody have any questions that they'd like to
No, I
put
appreciate
out there?
yeah, the experience and the realness, right? It is going to be hard for a little bit, but one thing that I can tell you is that time flies, right? Nels is almost done. He did all the hard work, and once he graduates, like he has a master's degree that can help him financially, and that degree, that education, no one can take that away from him. That's his hard work, right? That he can be proud for the rest of his life. So you can do it too. So it's hard, it's doable, and as long as you have the will, there's a way, right?
Yeah, I would tell people in this, like, make sure, like, do whatever work that you can do to, like, figure out how to finance your degree. Cause, like, I think I saw some slides earlier, like, from a different presentation or something, like, what's EDP program, like $80,000, which is like a considerable amount of money. And, I don't really know, like, I do feel like having the purple W on your resume or whatever on your diploma does maybe open up some doors. It depends on like kind of where you're wanting to go. I feel like I could like with a back like I have a master's in education, so like I can like teach school as well. And so I might try to use this as a way to like do a teach master's level courses at the UW or somewhere. But like really like whether it's through WDI or some kind of like way like clinical social work, like there's programs through the state of Washington as well as who know if they exist now, federal programs that would alleviate a lot of the student loan burden if you were gonna get into doing community-based mental health, which it's like that's what I do, and it depends on your love of people a little bit. Like you have to be willing to sit with people and hear probably some of the most traumatic things that you really wonder how people could do that to kids. Honestly, like how some of the things like I hear day in, day out. You have to be willing to call CPS sometimes because you're a mandated reporter. You have to be willing to call a sheriff's office once in a while to like communicate with them about possible things you've heard. So it's like the job is hard, but it is ultimately rewarding. It is so far. Like I've only worked at my practicum site since July, but yeah, no, like you're there to provide hope and relief for people, especially like in my job for kids. And you try to like be as much help as you possibly can. As far as practicum sites, my only advice is which like, as a therapist, you're not really there to give advice, but I guess I'm more of a peer role right now. But from the second you decide that this is like what you want to do, or if you sign the paperwork or you start your first day of class, be like casing practicum sites. Like, oh, I want to work at this place. Okay, send them an email or walk in there. That's how I got really lucky in the practicum site that I found, and was just through like me emailing and asking questions, and got really lucky to find a really good agency that is really like helping me and doing everything they can to develop me into a high quality therapist in our community, social work in our community. So that's something also to think about, I think, as you move forward. But yeah, no, I think June's exactly right. It seems not long ago that I was driving to Seattle for the first time. Like I think Jen and I talked, like I came to Seattle and met her, and like she kind of walked me through like what it would look like, because I needed I needed to go to Seattle and have something to eat down on University Avenue and get a feel for the UW. It's amazing to go there. If you've ever been to a University of Washington football game, you should go check it out. Like it's a great place to go to school. But yeah, time flies, and people need this more than ever. This is not something like we sat in a meeting, or I was an active participant in a meeting, about a week ago, where, we were seeing an uptick of clients using Chat GPT to like basically use as like a CBT, cognitive, behavioral therapy, like as like a way to like guide them through therapy. And all of the kids were like, this stupid, we want to talk to real people. And so like, yeah, on Sunday on the news, I saw that they began developing like musicians via AI and all this stuff, which like this is not a job that artificial intelligence, it will help, but it will never take the place of. People always need people to people contact and support. And that's what really this is. So,
That is
yeah.
so true. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time today and just sharing your experience, Nels. I think we're ready for the next slide. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. And we will move forward, but if folks have questions for Nels, I think that he's going to be around for just a little bit longer. So feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A. And just as a quick note, you've noticed that our programs have changed a little bit. So with the launch of our online program, we made some shifts. So the big change is the name. We now call it the part-time program, not the EDP, which we've fondly known for many, many years. And we also no longer offer a weekend option we don't admit to a weekend option anymore. So the structure is slightly different. So just wanted to kind of note that clarification there for folks. But yes, please do pop things in the chat. And I think it's my turn. All right, so I'm just going to go through these briefly. I know that I recognize some faces and some names, so you may have already seen this information, but this is just kind of some general information about admissions to make sure folks have that. We also encourage you to check out our previous recordings that go a little bit more in depth. We're just going to kind of skim through things tonight. So just as a reminder, there are several eligibility requirements. These are actually mandated by the graduate school. So the first is you must have a bachelor's degree or equivalent of a four-year bachelor's degree from an accredited institution. The minimum GPA is a 3.0. Again, this is a graduate school requirement, but don't worry, if you have a GPA below that, there is a process for petitioning. So we definitely encourage you to still apply. We have had great success in admitting folks that have below a 3.0 GPA. A lot of times, especially for folks that have been out of school for a long time, or if you have significant experience in the field, we can really advocate for that waiver. And then if this applies to anyone, you must also meet English proficiency requirements if English is not your first language. And there are a lot of details about this on the graduate school website, which is linked from our website. Lastly, people always ask this, it's not a requirement by any means, but we do recommend that folks come in with experience, as you've heard, from Nels and the other folks that have shared. Many of our students come in with a lot of experience or have been in the community doing related work for quite some time. And our most competitive applicants often do have at least 2,000 hours of experience. So just as a recommendation, Obviously, again, not a requirement, just an encouragement. All right, so the big thing I want to point to is the highlighted portion, the deadline. So January 15th is the priority deadline for part-time programs, and we have a space available extended deadline until February 12th, but we really encourage you to work on your application early. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't sort of chance technical glitches or other issues that may kind of get in the way of all your hard work being submitted. So we definitely encourage you to apply early. There are a lot of step-by-step instructions and details in on our website. So we encourage you to take a look at that. There's information about fee waivers, and then each of these components is also on a checklist. So just quickly, you will need to compile unofficial transcripts from any institution that you have attended, and you will need to submit those or upload those to the application. You don't need officials at this point. If you are admitted, you will need to provide an official transcript of your degree granting institution to the graduate school. Personal statement is a big piece, a big component of this. Definitely pay attention to the prompts. Ultimately, we want to know why you want to pursue social work. So tell us a little bit about, what leads you to that and your goals. And as I mentioned earlier, relevant experience is important to note, which you can note in a resume, but we'll also provide space for you to detail specific experiences that you think are relevant. There are a few short answer critical reflection questions. I think Nyla talked about this earlier. This is an important skill in terms of analysis in our program. And so there are a few questions to learn a little bit more about you and hear kind of more about your critical thinking. And then probably most importantly, ask now. You need 3 references. We highly recommend that one be academic and one be professional. The third is really up to you. But there's also some additional information and a guide for recommenders on our website as well. So those are just all of the pieces that you'll want to be kind of tracking and making sure you're ready to submit when the deadline comes. So if you haven't reached out to your recommenders at this point, now is a great time. Give them plenty of time so that it's not late. And again, if we're going through this quickly, just drop questions into the Q&A and we'll get to them. So there are a few additional components for those of you that are interested in pursuing the online program. So we are asking a few different questions in part to ensure that there is a good fit for the intention of the program. So you'll need to kind of specify where you're planning to work within Washington State or where you're planning to do your practicum. That will help us to identify potential areas or placements if you're admitted. We want to, really ensure that this format is going to be something that's going to work for you. And it's really important, as folks have already mentioned this throughout, community, the community connection is essential to thinking about how an MSW will prepare you and propel you to support community. And the link here leads to online learning expectations, just important pieces to consider as you're thinking about that. And as Nels revealed, the cost for this program is quite significant. And so it's really important to sort of chart a pathway and think about all those options for funding. If you haven't already, we have held a few different funding webinars, info sessions with a lot of different resources. The most recent recording may not be quite up yet. I'm looking at Sarah, but it will be very soon. So please do check that out. We will also be hosting a couple different, at least one session for the Child Welfare Training and Advancement Program in December. And we are hoping also to bring in the new behavioral health conditional grant program to talk about that as an option for funding as well. So lots of options here. So other things that you can be prepared to do and think about, definitely apply for federal financial aid. Even if you don't think you're eligible, this is a really important kind of qualifier for a lot of different resources for traineeships, for scholarships, and other things. So do plan to fill that out. It is going to be open very soon. And as I mentioned, some of these traineeships already, it's a great opportunity to kind of think about developing kind of more specialized skills in different areas. Two of them are mentioned here. We talk a lot about this in our funding webinar as well. And if folks are interested, I know somebody was talking about this earlier, but if you are interested in child welfare or are currently working in a child welfare or tribal office, then that might be a good option for you to consider. And we are having our first info session on December 9th. One of the ways that you can easily be considered for funding, and I would say there's a high percentage of part-time students who are funded through departmental scholarships or fellowships, is to complete the funding consideration form as part of your application. So once you submit it, you will actually be prompted to fill out an optional form. And this is your opt-in method. It's pretty simple and quick to be considered. If you don't do it, we can't consider you. So the highest recommendation is just to do it as soon as you submit your application. Look for that funding consideration form. It's probably the easiest thing that folks can overlook. So please do try to do that as soon as possible. All right, so some of the other things that I'm not going to go into detail, obviously you can get student employment through assistantships. There's a lot of other external funding. You might also pursue a paid practicum opportunity or an agency of employment, which has been mentioned already. One thing to note, this is a fee-based program. So there are several things that can become limitations. So tuition exemption, if you are a state employee, does not apply to fee-based programs. And so that is just something important to take note of if you're looking at a particular funding opportunity. Ensure that they are willing to support a fee-based program. So that's all I'm going to share about the admissions process. We are really in the thick of it now. So hopefully you have started your application or created a profile if you're considering applying for 2026. We know that many folks too are just scoping it out, and you may not be applying right away, but we encourage you to kind of reach out to us and talk to us. We have several advisors, including current MSW students, who are just wonderful to bounce ideas off of, to understand more about the student experience, to learn more about the social work field and opportunities. So definitely reach out if you have other questions along the way. If you're like, I'm in the portal, I can't figure out how to push this button or upload these things, just reach out and let us know. Give us a call, send us an email. And we will be adding more events to our calendar for winter, but for now, the next two sessions that are coming up, so kind of related to something that Nels had said, we have a more meso macro event talking to some of our alum who are doing work in this area. And then I've already mentioned this, the Child Welfare Training and Advancement Program. So that's it kind of for the formal presentation. We do want to make sure that we answer all of the questions that have been asked, and I want to come back because I think Genevieve had a good question. I hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah. So I think a great question was, at what point do you need to start a conversation about trying to complete the program earlier? And I want to sort of throw this kind of out to Nyla and June in particular, because there is really, there's a lot of things that have to line up to make this work. I think June mentioned just some of the course sequencing. It also relies heavily on your ability to complete practicum. So do y'all have advice on kind of when you should, and when and who do you talk to about trying to complete earlier? And 9 quarters is the absolute minimum. So you can expect to be in the program for 9 quarters at least.
That would be me. Yes. So I've helped students graduate earlier, but like Jen said, it's really your capability of finishing your practicum. As I mentioned, 525 is 17 credits. 1 credit's equivalent to 40 hours. So it's the agreement between you and your field faculty. And then electives is flexible. So some of my students complete their electives sooner. And then also it's just timing out the 598. As I said, it's a 3/4 sequence. So we want to make sure that you're taking the 598 when you start your 525 in the right order in order for you to graduate to that specific quarter that you want to graduate, right? So it just really depends. But it is possible.
Yeah, and I'll also just add that that is a rare circumstance. So graduating early because of getting your practicum hours is exceptionally rare. Most of our students will take on average anywhere from like 4 to 5 credits worth of practicum a quarter, and they typically cap at 6. I answered this in the Q&A. Someone was wondering what is the max that you can take. So just as a reminder, this is a part-time program option. So the other institutional barrier that you'll have to keep in mind as well is that you can't pass a certain threshold that would make you be considered a full-time student, which is around, June, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 credits. And so that will really limit you to the number of practicum credits that you can get. So I would say on average, most of our students are completing closer to the 11 or even later for some students because those practicum hours can be really difficult to accrue.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. And there was a question about submitting transcripts through Parchment. That is actually not necessary and will not be helpful typically because you have to upload them to your application in the portal. And that's why we ask for unofficials. Otherwise, the reviewers will not be able to see the transcript. So no need to do that. You just need to submit it on your own. So you can order it through Parchment for yourself, and then if that's what you need to do, and then upload a PDF of that.
Wonderful. And then just going to spotlight another question. It was posed by Selena earlier. Can you talk more about practicum placements for state agency workers? So in short, students can work with their field faculty to arrange what we call and what Jen referred to as an agency of employment. And what that means is your job could potentially count towards your practicum hours. There are a few considerations, and the main two are: one, does your agency and the work that you're doing fit within a clinical social work setting? And two, do you have access to a supervisor who has an MSW? Those tend to be the two biggest hurdles for getting an employment opportunity to count towards an agency of employment. But that is also something you don't have to worry about until practicum starts, which again is 4 quarters into your curriculum. So you'll have time and you'll be able to start those conversations with your field faculty before practicum actually begins for you. So it might sound like an overwhelming process, but there are folks along the way to get you where you need.
Great. Did we miss any other questions? I think we've got them all. I will just kind of lift up one question from the Q&A for everyone in the viewing audience to hear. So the question was like worded slightly different, but I want to kind of share the answer. So oftentimes people will ask if they're interested in different program options, like the full-time program and the evening option, what should they do? You should always apply to your first choice option, the program that you really want to be in. That's the program application that you should choose because there will be an application for each of the options. And you will have the ability for some of those program applications to choose a second choice. Some of them it's not feasible. So you will, if you were interested mostly in the evening option, you should apply to that part-time evening option application. So hopefully that helps some other folks too, if that's a contemplation.